JMath.
In this video, we'll be looking at how to factorize a cubic expression or a cubic function. So in grade 8, they taught you how to solve for x. In grade 9, 10, and 11, you guys explored how to solve an expression with x squared. And that was trinomials and difference of squares and those ones. Now they waited until grade 12 to teach you how to factorize a cubic function. And there are 4 main methods in how to solve it, and that's what I'm going to cover in this video. Okay, so we're going to go through all 4, but you will notice that many people skip this whole section because they opt for the 4th option. Okay, so I'll discuss that at the end of the video. But for anyone else who does not have an AP calculator, the white Casio or the one with the solar panel, you will have to choose one of the other 3 methods to solve these equations. Now, most of the time you'll use this when you need to draw a calculus graph and they ask you what are the x-intercepts for this graph. So you don't use it often, but you're going to get stuck if you don't know a method or if you don't have the calculator. So in all 4 of these methods, or the first 3, you need to find a factor to the expression. Now, a factor is any number that I sub in that will give me an answer of 0. So let's say I sub in 2, and that makes the whole expression a 0. Then the factor would be x minus 2 in a bracket. Okay, so with the first 3 methods, I always need to start by looking for a factor, and that's how I get it. Let's look at the inspection method. So here's a whole list of 9 steps to follow. If you want to write it down, I am just going to talk you through it and show you exactly practically what to do. And I'll go through all these steps, but I won't number them one by one. And I hope it'll make sense at the end. This is the method that I use when I teach and when I need to solve this quickly and I don't have my calculator with me. But you can choose at the end of this video which one you like the most. Okay, they are telling me solve for x if x cubed minus 13x minus 12 is equal to 0. So my first step is I need to get a factor. So I'm literally just going to take numbers and sub it into the place of x. Now in this case, I need to choose numbers that can divide in 12. So you're always going to go for a 1, a 2, and then any other factors that can divide into this number. So 3, 4, 6, and 12. Okay, and I choose plus or minus. Now, almost 90% of the time, it's either going to be a 1 or a 2. So you don't need to go through the whole list. But let's see in this case. If I sub in a 1, I am going to get 1 cubed stays 1. Minus 13 minus 12 is definitely not going to give me 0. But if I make this a minus and this a minus, then this would give me minus 1 plus 13 minus 12, and that does give me 0. Okay, perfect. So there I got a 0 when I subbed in minus 1. So then I must just write therefore x plus 1 is a factor. Okay, now I'm going to go into the inspection method. So I know in the end, I want to get to this expression. I'm going to put a 0 for the x squared because it wasn't present in my initial expression, but I need 4 spaces if it starts with x cubed. Okay, I know my first bracket is going to be x plus 1. I now need to figure out what the other bracket is, and I'm going to do that by saying if I take x cubed and I divide it by x, what is the answer? That would be x squared. Now I do the same with the 1 and the minus 12 at the end, and that would still give me minus 12. Now I'm going to put in a kx as a placeholder there. Okay, now the method says I am going to distribute this x with all 3 of those terms, and then the 1 with all 3 of those terms, and that's going to give me 6 terms for this step. So x cubed plus kx squared minus 12x, and I'm going to multiply everything by 1, plus 1x squared plus kx, and then just minus 12 equals 0. Now you can choose if you want to work with the x squareds or just the normal x's. I'm going to choose the x squareds just because they stand out. So if I add those two, it needs to give me 0x squared. So there's a bit of a weird step, but that's how the method works. So kx squared plus 1x squared must equal 0x squared. Okay, this is fairly easy. So then I can say kx squared is equal to minus 1x squared, and therefore k is equal to minus 1. Now I go back to the small bracket and big bracket, and I sub in the value. So x plus 1, and then x squared minus 1x minus 12 should equal 0. And now I can just solve that last trinomial. So x plus 1, and then x, it's 12. So 4 times 3 gives me 12. So I know this is a minus 4, and this is a plus 3 equals 0. And therefore, if I solve for x, x is equal to minus 1, or x is equal to 4, or x is equal to minus 3. Okay, guys, so many steps to follow, but if you practice this a bit, it flows quite nicely. Let's look at another example with the inspection method. So let's look at question 2. So in this case, they're telling me what one of the factors are. Because this is a fairly difficult sum and all my factors are going to be fractions, they have to tell me what the factor is. They don't want to catch you out, and they're not going to make it impossible in exams. So they are quite nice in this case. So I can now start with, I know my expression ultimately needs to be 12x cubed minus 16x squared minus 7x plus 6 equals 0. and the first bracket is going to be the one that they gave me, so 2x minus 1. Now, if I divide 12x cubed by 2x, I get 6x squared. If I divide the last term by the minus 1, so the last one in the small bracket, I get minus 6. I am going to add a kx in there, so I have a variable to figure out. And now I can just multiply the 2x with all three and the minus 1 with all three, and it's going to look like this. Now I can see that 2kx squared minus 6x squared must equal minus 16x squared. Therefore, 2kx squared must equal to minus 16 plus 6 gives me minus 10x squared, and therefore 2k must equal minus 10, and k is equal to minus 5. Okay, so I could have also taken another couple in this case, so let me just highlight and tell you what I mean. I could have said the minus 12x minus kx must equal minus 7, and that would also give me minus 5 in the end. So you're really free to choose which one, as long as it has a k value in that you can solve. Okay, now I'm going to rewrite my brackets and then try and solve the trinomial that I get afterwards. So 6x squared minus 5x minus 6 is equal to 0. So now to factorize this, I can say this must be 3x, and then this would be a 3, this would be a 2x, and this would be a 2. The reason I chose that combination is this gives me a 9, this gives me a 4, 9 minus 4 gives me 5. Now I want this couple to be negative, so I can put a minus there, and I can put a plus there. Okay, now I have my three brackets, and then I can say, therefore, the first bracket equals 0. So then I take the 1 over, and I divide by 2, and that would give me positive a half. Or the second bracket equals 0, so that would be minus 2 over 3, or the last one, and that would equal 3 over 2. And those are my three answers. Okay, so that was the inspection method. So if this method didn't make sense and it was too many steps, let me show you the long division method. So it links with what you did in primary school, but many people do not like this method. So let me show you and you can choose for yourself. So step 1 will be to find the factor. So I'm going to sub in random numbers until I get an answer of 0. And the numbers I'm allowed to choose from must be able to divide into 6 properly. So in this case, I'm going to start with minus 1. You can start with 1 or 2 or 3, but in this case, I'm going to start with minus 1. So this would give me minus 1, this would give me minus 4, this would give me minus 1, and this would give me plus 6. That equals 0, and therefore, I subbed in minus 1, so the factor would be x plus 1. So just like in primary school, I make a little house, and then the factor that I got, I write on the left, so x plus 1 goes there, and then I can write the original expression inside, so minus 4x squared plus x plus 6. After I filled in everything in their correct places, I'm going to go through this sequence of operations. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide, and I'm going to divide the x cubed by the x. That answer I'm going to write up top. So x cubed divided by x gives me x squared. Now I need to multiply. So I'm going to say x squared multiply by this whole factor in front. Okay, so if I say x squared times x, it gives me x cubed. X squared times 1 gives me plus 1x squared. Now I'm going to minus. See what I have left. X cubed minus x cubed gives me nothing. Minus 4x squared minus x. Okay, because remember I'm minusing, so must put it in a bracket and a minus in front. Minus 4 minus 1 gives me minus 5x squared. Now I must bring down, and that's just a plus x. Now I restart the set of operations. So I'm going to again say, what is minus 5x squared divided by x? Okay, that would give me minus 5x. Now I'm going to multiply. Minus 5x times x gives me minus 5x squared. Minus 5x times 1 gives me minus 5x. Okay, now I can minus again. Minus 5 minus minus 5 gives me 0. And then 1x minus minus 5 gives me 6x. Now bring down the 6. And then I divide again by this factor. So 6x divided by 6 gives me plus 6. If I multiply 6 by x plus 1, it gives me 6x. And if I minus, that gives me a 0. Then I know I did it correct. Okay, so now to answer the question, I can say if I factorize this, the brackets would be x plus 1, x squared minus 5x plus 6, and that should equal 0. And I can just solve the trinomial. So x minus 3, x minus 2 is equal to 0. Therefore, x equal minus 1, or x equal 2, or x equals 3. Okay, guys, I hope that's a flashback to primary school and long division. Even with algebra long division, the steps stay the same. It just looks way more complicated. Let's do another example for this method, and you can see if you like it. Step 1, again, is to find a factor. So I can just write down and leave space where I'm going to sub stuff in. And I can start with a 1, but it doesn't look like a 1 is going to work. So I'm rather going to sub in a 2. Okay, the more you guys do it, the more you'll start to see what can actually work and what really doesn't work. So minus 2 cubed gives me minus 8. This is minus 4 times 4 gives me minus 16. 2 times 3 gives me plus 6 and plus 18. So I have a minus 24 plus 24, and that would just equal 0. So perfect. 2 was the right number, and I can therefore say, therefore, x minus 2 is a factor. Okay, now I can start my long division. Just going to make my little house there. X minus 2 goes there, and then minus x cubed minus 4x squared plus 3x plus 18. Okay, so let's just write down the steps again. Firstly, divide, then multiply, then minus, then bring down. Okay, so I'm going to say, what is minus x cubed divided by x? That gives me minus x squared. Now I need to take minus x squared and multiply it by x minus 2. So that would give me minus x cubed and then plus 2x squared. Okay, now I need to subtract this. Minus x cubed gives me nothing. Then minus 4x squared minus 2x squared gives me minus 6x squared. Bring down the plus 3x. Okay, now I'm going to divide again. So minus 6x squared divided by x gives me minus 6x. Okay, I can now multiply minus 6x times the factor in front. So that gives me minus 6x squared plus 12x. If I subtract that, I get a 0, and then 3 minus 12 gives me minus 9x, bring down, so plus 18. So minus 9x divided by x just gives me minus 9. Okay, I multiply minus 9 there, so minus 9x plus 18. If I minus that, it's just going to give me a 0. So then I know I factorized correctly. So the brackets would be x minus 2, is the small bracket. Bigger bracket would be minus x squared minus 6x minus 9 would equal 0. Okay, now I can solve this trinomial. Yeah, all these methods are extremely long, so just bear with me. So I need to solve this trinomial. I don't like the minuses. So I already know that this first bracket is going to equal to 0, and then the other bracket's also going to equal 0. So I can split them there already. And like I said, I don't like the minus. I'm just going to divide everything by minus. Plus 9 is equal to 0. And therefore, this would be x plus 3, and x plus 3 equals to 0. So therefore, my answers would be x is equal to 2, or x is equal to minus 3. I don't need to write it twice, but I know that 2 of my answers would be negative 3. Okay, that was an example of algebraic long division. Let me teach you the shortest method if you don't use the calculator, and hopefully it makes sense. Many people use this, and I like this method the most. This is called synthetic division. Okay, now don't get confused with the little house in long division. So synthetic division also uses a house, but this time it's upside down. But before I get there, I still need to find a factor. So I now need to sub something in and see what gives me 0. I can sub in a 1 or a minus 1, but if I look at the numbers, it doesn't look like something's going to cancel out if there's a 1. Let me put in a 2. So let's go for a 2, a 2, and a 2. That gives me 8. That gives me 9 times 4, which is 36. That gives me 52, and that gives me minus 24. And if I look at this, this gives me a 60. This gives me a minus 60, so that will work. And therefore, x minus 2 is a factor. Now, to set up the synthetic division, I do my house like this. And I'm not writing the x's, I'm just writing the numbers. So that's a 2. Then I'm going to write the coefficients of where I started. So a 1, a minus 9, a 26, and a minus 24. Okay, now in this method, I always start with a 0 in that place there. Now I just add and multiply. So I'm going to add 1 plus 0 gives me a 1. Then I'm taking this bottom number, multiplying it by that number. Okay, so if I multiply, that just gives me a 2. Now I'm going to add that, and I'm going to multiply again. Okay, so if I multiply, that gives me minus 14. If I then add those together, I get a plus 12, and then I multiply the plus 12 there, that gives me plus 24. Now I know I did this correct if I end with a 0. Okay, now what on earth does all these numbers mean? So this means x minus 2 would be my first bracket, just like we saw there and there. Okay, and then the big bracket would be these coefficients that is below the little house. So 1x squared minus 7x plus 12 equals 0. So these three numbers there actually gives me the numbers for the trinomial. Okay, and now I can just solve the trinomial, and that would be the answer to the question. So x minus 2, and then what times what gives me 12? It's 3 times 4, and if I add them, it gives me negative 7. So x minus 4 and x minus 3 would equal 0. So therefore, x equals 2, or x equals 4, or x equals 3. Let's do another example, and Hopefully I don't go too fast. Sorry for going so fast in this video. There's a lot to cover. You can just play this back and see every step. And if it still doesn't make sense, just drop me a message and I'll explain it a bit slower. Okay, first step as always is get a factor. So if I sub in 1 into all of these places, I'm going to get a minus 62 there. So 1 is definitely not going to give me the correct answer there. Okay, there's too many minuses there. So I know I'm going to have to sub in a negative number. 1 didn't work. So I'm going to go for minus 2 in this case. So this is all a trial and error, this first step. But the more you do it, the quicker you'll feel one is correct. So if I do this, this gives me minus 8 plus 4 plus 44 minus 40. So plus 48 minus 48 does give me 0. And therefore, x plus 2 is a factor. Okay, let's put it in a bracket. Okay, so now I can make the house. And I'm going to write minus 2 in there. I'm going to have to, in the top row, write the original coefficient. So it's a plus 1, it's a plus 1, minus 22, and minus 40. Okay, this is always a 0. And now I can just add 1 plus 0 gives me 1. Now I multiply. So minus 2 times 1 gives me minus 2. If I add those, it gives me minus 1. Then I multiply. Minus 1 times minus 2 just gives me positive 2. Now I add again. So minus 22 plus 2 gives me minus 20. Minus 20 times minus 2 gives me plus 40. If I add them, I get a 0. That's how I know I am correct. Now I can write the brackets. So x plus 2 in my first bracket, and then x squared minus x minus 20 should equal 0. I can just do that little trinomial. So this must be, so what times what gives me 20, and if I subtract them, I need to get a 1. So this would be minus 5, and then plus 4 equals 0. Therefore, x is equal to minus 2, or x is equal to 5, or x is equal to minus 4. So that was synthetic division. So it's the quickest one, but it can be the most confusing. So you need to choose out of the 3 that we did, which one do you prefer? Let me show you the easiest method. So if you have one of these calculators, you can just go and press the mode button, press the equation, choose the cubic expression, and then type the 4 values and get your answers. Okay, so this is not officially cheating. It's a bit unfair to people who don't have this calculator, but it's not cheating. If you just do it correctly, your teacher will not know that you use the calculator. So let me show you that. But with great power comes great responsibility. Yay, Peter Parker. So please watch out. You can get all the answers and still not get full marks. So make sure you know how to write it correct on paper. So if you have the calculator, you must let it look like you did not use the calculator. So I'm always going to do this little setup that I have on screen now. So you will now start filling in at the bottom because the calculator is going to give you the answers. Then you need to write the 3 brackets, and then you need to FOIL the last 2 to give you the big bracket up there. So let's type this in and let me show you what's happening. So if I look at the given expression, this would be my A value, this is my B value, C value, and D value. So I can say A is equal to 2, B is equal to minus 5, C is equal to minus 23, and D is equal to minus 10. On my calculator, if I go into the correct mode, I will see this. So you're going to press mode, equation, choose ax cubed, and then this should be on your screen. Now I can just type in the correct value. So 2 equals minus 5 equals minus 23 equals, and then minus 10 equals. And then it will give me my 3 answers. So x is either minus 2, or minus a half, or 5. Okay, so x is either minus 2, or minus a half, or 5. Okay, I now need to make it look like I did this in my head. So this would be x plus 2. This would be 2x plus 1. So I can never write a fraction in that bracket. If I have a fraction, I just put the denominator in front of x. This would be x minus 5. The first bracket stays the same. And now I just FOIL the last 2. So 2x squared minus 10x plus 1x gives me minus 9x, and then minus 5. There we go. I'll get full marks. No one will know I used my calculator. Okay, let's just do one more with the calculator. So I'm starting with this skeleton, and I just need to fill in all the details. So you can see my A value is 1, my B value is 1, my C value is minus 5, my D value is plus 3. Okay, on the calculator, I am then just going to type all of that in. So A is 1, B is 1, C is minus 5, and D is equal to 3. Okay, my first x value would be minus 3, then 1, and that's all they give me. So minus 3 and 1. Okay, so now I have a bit of a dilemma. I know I should have 3 answers, but I only have 2. Let's see what's going on. So if I fill in this bracket, it would be x plus 3. This bracket would be x minus 1. I know this bracket would be x plus 3 as well. But now I have a gap. That means that one of the 2 values must repeat. Okay, you always look at this last number to know which one should repeat. Because if I would now FOIL the 3, the 1, and whatever number is there, it needs to equal up to 3. So if I add another 3 in the last bracket, it's not going to be 3, it's going to be 9. So that's how I know the 3 does not repeat, the 1 repeats. So the last bracket must then be x minus 1. If I FOIL this, x squared minus 2x plus 1. Perfect. I can then delete this because I don't want to write a duplicate answer. I must have double brackets to end up with x cubed, but I don't need to write x equals 1 again. Okay, guys, that was a very long video explaining all of the methods. Please choose the one that you're the most comfortable with and practice it enough so in exams you don't wonder which method goes where and which one to choose.
If this video helped you, please like and subscribe.
JMath.